Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Dallas Cowboys had the best week one of anyone. Also, the 49ers put a boot in the enthusiasm for the Jets. And Brian Daboll, he has to go.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
In just a matter of about 48 hours, the Dallas Cowboys went from, are the vibes great on this team right now? What's exactly going on here to Dak Prescott getting $60 million a year and the Cowboys absolutely boat racing the Cleveland Browns, a 33-17 game that was not even really that close for most of the contest. Landon McCool from Locked On Cowboys joins me now. And Landon, can you give us some insight into the difference in the way that Cowboys Nation feels today than maybe, let's say, on Thursday?
Oh, the vibes are immaculate. I mean, it's like the halls of ancient beer halls are all ringing with Cowboys victory songs, and you know, it's raining gold and silver. Just like, you know, this is how it is in Cowboys Nation, right? It's either we're wading through the pits of hell, or we're standing glorious on top of our vanquished enemies, right? It's nothing in between. And so the Cowboys as an organization really leaned into that on Sunday by signing Dak Prescott, going onto the road to a tough AFC opponent, and but like you said, boat racing them, totally whooping them, and to the point where it feels like, you know, half of Cowboys Nation right now is celebrating with excitement, and the other half is trying to find the tweets that they said about what a great team the Browns are and how they're going to kick our butts, and deleting them quickly before anyone finds them.
Yeah, it is the definition of it's so over, we're so back, right? Like that's what they were. They were a meme made manifest. One of the reasons why they were able to absolutely throttle the Browns, officially 17 quarterback hits on an offensive line that, coming in at least, we thought was going to be pretty good. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and then DeMarvion Overshawn was like a bat out of hell this entire game. I can't say that too many Cowboys fans probably knew who that was heading into this game. They're going to know now. Can you give us a little insight?
Yeah, I mean, if you've been listening to Locked On Cowboys, you've been hearing us talking about him for a long time. But
well, people in Texas know because he went to Texas. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And he was a safety at the University of Texas. And I think, you know, for folks that were out at training camp last year, they saw a little bit of this. Right. And they were like, oh, boy, they found something with this kid. Last year, you know, there's lots of talk about how kind of disappointing early on the returns were for last year's draft class. But the one guy who really, really stood out in the training camp was Overshown. And when he got injured, everybody was really, you know, upset because they really thought that they had a star. You know, fast forward a year later, him and actually a trio of three other guys all dealing with ACL injuries, all that they got, I think, within 3 days of each other. Yeah. All kind of recovered together. And Overshown was definitely the guy that was the leader of that pack and was, you know, getting everyone. He showed like a real leadership skill, just kind of getting everyone back up and working hard in the offseason. And then once we started seeing him on the field, we started to see this kind of thing from him. And it was just the speed, the closing burst, you know, the ability to recognize what's happening and to process everything quickly. I mean, I think it takes a special kind of athlete to go forward in a defense, right? To go from safety to linebacker. I mean, we talked about Bell obviously last year when he had to do this similarly, but I think it takes, you know, a special kind of processor to go from safety to linebacker. And that's the kind of thing that Overshown has. And I think the Cowboys got a real star in him. And I think we've only kind of scratched the surface in what he's going to be able to do in the Zimmer defense, because he's going to be able to fly through that A gap and take guys down and get a bunch of sacks. He's going to be able to run sideline to sideline. They're going to be able to use him in a lot of different interesting ways.
Yeah, and the addition of Eric Kendricks was a little bit mocked, right? This offseason, oh, this is the only move they made, is this linebacker who may or may not be washed up. He comes in, he gets a pair of sacks, He's second on the team in tackles, plus gets an interception. Like, Did they find the fountain of youth in Dallas? What's going on?
Yeah, apparently so. He's on pace for 32 sacks this year and 17 interceptions. So he's really turned it around. No, I mean, I think he, what people forget is that he was actually slated to go to play for San Francisco. But when Zimmer got the job at Dallas and changed his plans to go play for Dallas, I think that look, we know the linebackers that are in San Francisco. He wasn't going to be a starter there, but I think he was clearly planning to play a lot, and I think he still had a lot of football left in him. And clearly, as he came into the training camp and started to show out a little bit, guys were like, "Wow, he's still got some legs left in him." I also think the fact that the Cowboys made a committed, approach to improving linebacker play, both through improving the personnel around, Kendricks is obviously a big part of that, but not just Kendricks, but also improving the defensive tackle play, which was so much better. It's hard to describe. I'm going through the All-22 as we speak, actually, and just seeing what the defensive tackles are doing to keep the second level clean is just so different than what the Dallas has experienced before. So I think guys like Kendricks and Overshone and Clark can all play free and make big plays, which is ultimately what happened on Sunday.
I think it's telling of what happened that Dak Prescott got $60 million a year, and we haven't even mentioned it yet this deep into the interview. So let's end there. If you were just going to do this, if you were just going to max him out and go $5 million AAV above the last guy that got signed, the guy that is going to be sitting out for a little while in Green Bay, Jordan Love, why didn't they get this done 6 weeks ago, Landon? Like, if this was what they were going to do, why wait?
I mean, as a guy who hosts a weekly or daily show every single day,
thank you,
I was going to say, you never look a gift horse in the mouth, Peter. I don't know what you're saying. Look, I mean, honestly, I've told Cowboys fans, I'm personally never going to get a concern over this kind of thing again, because ultimately, at the end of the day, Jerry Jones has told you deadlines make deals, and that is the only thing he responds to. And to be honest, he doesn't. I think people get upset because the same people that say that the cap doesn't exist also spend a lot of time telling Jerry that he's wasting a lot of money by waiting to pay. When if the cap doesn't exist, then why does it matter if he's paying a lot more money if he wants to pay to see it first, right? If you want, so ultimately, I'm not watching Jerry's pockets. He can spend a little extra money on free agents if it's not going to hurt other free agent signings, which I don't think it does. I think he tells you that it does, but even if he signed those guys back then, he wasn't signing those other guys off the street free agents that all the Cowboys fans, were claiming for. So I think obviously he does this so you guys and me and everyone that does this for a living keep talking about the Cowboys all throughout the season, all throughout the Olympics, all throughout the fact that they didn't do it very much in the offseason. All throughout the fact that they had a disappointing exit from the playoffs last year. So it's hard not to view it as a big distraction when you're right. The CD deal, we all guessed that number in March. With the Dak deal, no one was shocked by the Dak deal. The number that came through is exactly what we all anticipated. So what's the delay? The delay was to keep the organ grinding just a little bit longer before the season starts.
Stay up to date on the Dallas Cowboys all year long by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Cowboys on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Niners stood tall against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets on Monday night. Before we get to that, Deshaun Watson, he's in trouble again. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. The Packers opened as 3.5 or 4-point favorites, depending on when you looked at it. They're now 3.5-point underdogs, thanks to the injury to Jordan Love. Malik Willis in, Jordan Love out, although Matt LaFleur left the door open a little bit that he could play, so you might be able to find some value there. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Deshaun Watson is being accused of assault again, and the details are once again unsettling. A woman who is referred to only as Jane Doe in the lawsuit is suing Watson for sexual assault and battery from an incident in October of 2020. The two had a dinner date set up at her apartment, but Watson had trouble finding her place, according to the lawsuit. He called Jane Doe and was aggressively yelling that he didn't have time for this. After finding her apartment, she apparently invited him in. The lawsuit alleges that events then took place to where Watson sexually assaulted Jane Doe, and only when she grabbed a heavy object to defend herself did he leave her apartment. The Los Angeles Rams will be without wide receiver Puka Nacua for at least 4 weeks as he was placed on IR on Monday. Nacua sprained his PCL, according to head coach Sean McVay. Nacua suffered the injury while making a catch midway through the second quarter of a 26-20 overtime loss to the Lions. He limped off the field and went into the blue medical tent where he was evaluated. Nacua later returned to the game for a short stint before exiting once again. He had 4 catches for 35 yards in Sunday's game before the injury. Matt LaFleur seemed to leave open the door that Jordan Love could play this week despite a reported MCL injury. LaFleur said if Love isn't medically cleared for the Indianapolis Colts at Lambeau Field on Sunday, Malik Willis would be the starter. LaFleur said Love would not be going on IR, and if his tone is to be believed, it's because the Packers think he can be back sooner rather than later, potentially as soon as this week. It's also possible, of course, that Matt LaFleur is playing the game here, making the Colts prepare for 2 quarterbacks potentially and hoping he can create some sort of advantage from it. I would not expect to see Jordan Love in week 2, week 3, not out of the question. And I would put my money on week 4 at home against the Minnesota Vikings. It was Aaron Rodgers' return to the NFL after missing all of last season with an Achilles injury. And the San Francisco 49ers did what the San Francisco 49ers always seem to do to Aaron Rodgers. They beat the crap out of his football team 32-19 in a game that in the second half wasn't even really that close. Brian Peacock from Locked On 49ers joins me now. And Brian, Brandon Ayuk trade drama, Trent Williams contract drama, Christian McCaffrey didn't even suit up and they just don't miss a beat. How are they doing it?
Didn't need any of them, Peter. All they needed.
Ayuk didn't do anything.
all they needed was a former Packer on the other side. And that's all it took.
Yeah.
Look, the 49ers, I think the vibes really flipped for the 49ers. I would have picked the Jets to win easily, 10 days ago. But seeing Christian McCaffrey with the good report, he's back to practice. I felt like, this is awesome, even though apparently we know now he wasn't going to play in this game and didn't end up playing in this game. That's an injury that you don't love. But look, Kyle Shanahan's always been able to run the football with his offenses. You get one of your top wide receivers back, even though you knew he wasn't going to play 100% of the snaps in Brandon Ayuk, and he didn't look 100% in this one, ready to go. Dropped a potential touchdown pass with a dime from Brock Purdy. Trent Williams was got the
my under bet thanks him, but yes.
100% of the snaps until he needs to go get an IV because he's not in midseason shape. But it didn't matter because first of all, Jordan Mason's a really good running back and often fined by the 49ers scouting staff. I don't know if you know the story, but I can tell it really quickly. He was at Georgia Tech. He was the starting running back early in his career at Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech got the top recruit they've ever gotten in the history of the program named Jahmyr Gibbs, that ended up playing over him. And then after Jordan Mason leaves and got the starting job taken away from him by this 5-star recruit, Jahmyr Gibbs then went and played 1 year at Alabama and got drafted in the top 15. So he was really hidden in that draft class. Jordan Mason was. He's a legit back, and we saw that tonight. And I'm not surprised at all that he ran really well behind a Kyle Shanahan offense that always finds a way to run the football. What I was surprised about is that the 49ers were able to do such a number on that Jets offense. Yeah. And after one drive where Aaron Rodgers just peppered Garrett Wilson with the ball, and it felt like, okay, they got an early lead now. And they got a little rhythm going, and the 49ers shut it down and really dominated the game from there.
I'm just over here sipping my tea, but the best drive the Jets had was really the one where they did a lot of the Shanahan stuff, the stuff that Aaron Rodgers did with Matt LaFleur, that he came and kind of said, yeah, we're not really going to do that in New York as much. An interesting juxtaposition there, Brian, but that defense, to your point, they lost some pieces, and they just seem to be able to cycle through. They're now breaking in a new defensive coordinator. How are they going to be able to sustain this over the course of the season when they are, pretty top heavy here, really on both sides?
Yeah. So the two big things I had my eye on, and look, the 49ers defensive line didn't dominate this game, but they didn't need to. Thankfully, I'm worried about the new look defensive line, the depth on the defensive line. They didn't get a ton of pressure. There was a couple of pressures here and there. When they did get Aaron Rodgers out on the move, he looked awful. Like he didn't look good moving at all.
He looked fine from the pocket, but when he had to move, it looked rough. Even
when he was throwing, he was really front footed, and he doesn't want to maneuver around on that bad Achilles, much like Kirk Cousins. And he probably looked a little better than Kirk Cousins did yesterday.
A little.
But in the offensive line, which Trent Williams, a holdout all camp long, they're banged up a little bit. You got a rookie starting at right guard, and they were fine. They opened up hole after hole against a really good New York Jets defense. So the 49ers passed a lot of tests. They didn't need to light the scoreboard on fire. They were able to run the ball. Brock Purdy didn't throw any picks. He didn't throw any touchdowns. He was just fine. Didn't ruin the game for the 49ers and allowed them to run the ball and do whatever they needed to do with Debo, the wide back, and Jordan Mason running the football, and got out of there with a W and ended up just kind of leaning on the New York Jets in the end.
This team ultimately stealing still feels the same to you. They can be a Super Bowl team. They can win the Super Bowl.
Yes, because they're not even at full power. You get Christian McCaffrey back, and look, be smart. You've got a good player backing him up now, and you don't have to push him back. If he's not ready for a couple of weeks, that's fine. You can go win some games. We clearly know that a Kyle Shanahan offense is going to be able to run the ball. You're less dynamic, but that's okay. Brandon Ayuk's going to get his legs under him. Trent Williams will be back to 100% and in mid-season form, and then I think you'll start getting a lot more Bosa sacks and a lot more Leonard Floyd sacks. And really one of the underrated stories is one of the better secondaries the 49ers have put together, even without Talanoa Hufanga, that they're still going to get back really soon as well. So the 49ers able to come out, win a game early in the season, nowhere near full strength. This team could be a juggernaut when they get everybody back.
Stay up to date all year on the San Francisco 49ers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On 49ers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, it's time for Brian Daboll to go. The New York Giants look listless with that poor performance after getting beaten down by the Minnesota Vikings at home. Locked On NFL host Tony Wiggins is ready to get Brian Daboll out of the Big Apple.
I'm gonna tell you something, man. In all my years as a barber, whenever I hear somebody say, "I don't know what to tell you," they really don't know what to tell you, bro. You and I have been in that same situation. Yeah. That sound and that look of distress means somebody might get a pink slip here real soon.
Yeah, I mean, that was me yesterday with Carolina, and I'm sure it's probably you at Jacksonville as well. It's like we have been there, and I feel for Patricia because it's not like the Giants have been an organization that have traditionally been this bad, but recently it's gotten bad. Like 2022 clearly was an aberration. When you saw what Daniel Jones was able to do with Brian Daboll in that year one, go to the playoffs, be able to knock off the Vikings in that wild card round. Then last year, Jones didn't play well. He gets hurt. They come back after an offseason where we saw on that HBO offseason Hard Knocks, they were looking for a quarterback. They were thinking about getting Drake May from North Carolina, which would have been delicious. Both Drake May, Daniel Jones from Charlotte. Daniel went to Duke. Drake went to North Carolina. We know that rivalry, how great that would have been to see him replaced by a Tar Heel. They didn't do it. They rolled with Daniel Jones, and then they got cooked by Sam Darnold. That's got to be one of the worst feelings in week one for any team this week, to get cooked by Sam Darnold and to have your quarterback look that bad in year three with that coach.
It is. And you know what? That coach is going to end up going to the unemployment line because of that quarterback and some other decisions that were made by the front office. To add injury to insult, I saw Saquon Barkley the other night look like the dude that he was drafted to be. 3 touchdowns, and he's playing for the rival Eagles. It's like the optics it can't get any worse when you add all of this stuff up. And in general, when you hear someone that covers the team the way Patricia covers that team every day with Locked On Giants sound like that after one game, it sounds like somebody got to go.
It seems like so long ago, Brian Daboll was coach of the year. It wasn't. It was just 2 years ago. But this Giants team, this version of the team looks totally different. All the good vibes, all the juice that they had, it's gone. And in its place, a rudderless, talentless, directionless ship. That falls on the head coach. The front office plays a role in this, no doubt. But they did what everyone thought they would do. They drafted Malik Neighbors. Could they have drafted a quarterback? Yes, but they botched this quarterback thing. Was that Brian Daboll's call? That's what I want to know. Was that Brian Daboll's call to sign Daniel Jones, or did he make Daniel Jones look good enough in his first year that he got Daniel Jones paid by an organization, by an owner? If that was Brian Daboll's call, I'm with Tony. That's it. But if it wasn't, I think he deserves some room to get this right with his quarterback. I guess we'll see. And finally, the one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball. Movie legend James Earl Jones passed away at the age of 93 on Monday. He voiced iconic characters like Darth Vader in Star Wars and Mufasa in The Lion King. But one of his most iconic scenes is in the movie Field of Dreams. He urges the main character, Ray Kinsella, played by Kevin Costner, to not sell his farm, as people will come. Rest in peace to one of the best voices, best actors, most iconic actors in Hollywood history. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, who will have a bounce back performance in week 2? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.